Hey, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or Pfftoo. I love Pfftoo, and as a longtime player of D&D and other systems, I want to share my thoughts on things I find along my journey. Today we're going to be covering the second video of the Thaumaturge class series. This one is going to be the Thaumaturge Archetype and other multi-class archetypes and how they work with Thaumaturge. First, I'm going to be talking about what classes gain as a benefit when taking the Thaumaturge multi-class archetype, starting with Alchemist, because it starts with A. We're going to start with the Bomber. One enemy gains weakness against all your bombs. This is great for persistent damage or splash damage, because both add the 2 damage from the multi-class archetype to only one enemy. Okay, so it's not amazing, but it's still beneficial. And I'm going to explain later how it's a little bit more amazing if we do it a little bit differently. Next, Alchemist subclassy thingy, Chirurgeon. I've always liked that word. It's a surgeon, but Chirurgeon is more fun to say. Not a lot of synergy here. But if you're trying to do a healer's job, consider the Bell implement along with the Chirurgeon. It will prevent damage by messing with the effect before it hurts your friends. So that's beneficial. You can instead choose the Chalice and flavor it alchemically to gain the reputation of being an amazing miracle worker without being a cleric or even having a religion. You could just flavor it as like a medical pack or something, or a tricorder and like a hypospray. Mutagenist. Bell or weapon implements give you useful reactions that you wouldn't normally have as a mutagenist. You could do, as Toxicologist, you could add the flat 2 damage to a target of your glimpse of vulnerability, which is generally beneficial a little bit, much like the Bomber. Also, with the Toxicologist, the Mirror implement can make it easier to deliver your poisons by flanking your opponent with yourself. And also for all of the Alchemists, Scroll Thaumaturgy is a useful feat, just because it gives you more variety and options. And the Alchemist really excels at options, so you're a bigger Swiss Army knife with more Swiss armies. Barbarians. I don't know, the first thing I gotta say is the Thaumaturge feat, Turn Away Misfortune, just seems like a perfectly fitting superstitious-based feat for a Barbarian. And it's a reaction. And Barbarians don't natively come with a reaction like a fighter does, so it could be useful. For the implements, it's unlikely that you'd use any, because they all require a hand, and you're a Barbarian, so you're hitting things with a big fuck-off axe. But the Amulet's reaction and the Bell make a lot of sense, so you could use those if you use a one-handed thing, or Claws. You could use Claws as a Barbarian, but it's still not a two-handed weapon. I don't know. It's for the right Barbarian, it's good to have extra reaction abilities. But most Barbarians aren't going to care about a Thaum dip. It's not really a dip in Pfftoo, is it? It's a selection of a subset of abilities that you have to adhere to for at least 3 feats. We'll call it a dip, because people from 5e know what that means, or 3-5. So champions who take the Thaumaturge archetype. Sit down. For theme, the Chalice. Seriously, the Holy Grail. It's perfect. Now, each implement requires a hand, and champions already get reactions pretty readily too, so champion sword and board is most common. I guess if you're claws and board, no, you still can't hold an implement in the claw hand because you're clawing. Just not a lot of synergy here. You could take paired link feet, so it's easier to lay on hands from far away. Cleric, similar thing. You could take the feat paired link. And for the implements, you could choose the Bell Regalia weapon. I mean, any of the implements could be useful for the cleric. Even the wand, which isn't great, usually. This all assumes you aren't a melee cleric, or that if you are, you're okay not using a weapon. Claws? It has been brought up, I want to point this out here because I keep mentioning claws, that it works for any unarmed strike, which for a Kitsune is their whippy foxfire tail. For a sprite, it's their little magic fairy dust. Sprite Spark, I think is what it's called. And for the automaton is laser beams. So there are a lot of ancestries that have their own unarmed strike that comes with them. And even if it's a ranged unarmed strike, it still works very well with a Thaumaturge. But we're not talking about ancestries, we're talking about classes and archetypes. So, Druid class. Again, paired link, because it extends the range of your beneficial spells. Also, the Thaumaturge feat Root to Life. It's just a good theme. I mean, yeah, okay, it's probably not all that useful, or not all that necessary. If you're a druid, you can stabilize and heal people anyway. But it's neat. Put a little tree on somebody. You could choose the bell, because I'm going to recommend bell for almost everybody, because the bell is great. It interrupts nasty shit headed for you or your friends, and it's a reaction. And caster classes don't usually have a wide variety of reactions. So if you're taking Thaumaturge and you're playing a caster, reactions are a good implement way to go. And the bell is a very useful one. It's the amulet, bell, or weapon. And weapon isn't useful if you're not in melee. Fighter! Amulet, maybe? Chalice, maybe? All the implements need a hand. Fighters usually don't have a free hand. If they somehow did, I'd recommend the amulet to prevent damage to them, because you're not always going to be able to use reactive strike or attack of opportunity depending on how you're looking at the rules, because the enemy might not be right in melee range of you. So the amulet could be great to help you or your friends. Or the chalice could also prevent damage to you. It takes an action. It's not always ideal for a fighter, but for the right fighter, it could be very helpful. Gunslinger. Thaums have ammunition thaumaturgy. So it's like supposed to work well with a gunslinger. It's an option that specifically works with a gunslinger. It works well with the way of the spell shot, but you have to take that archetype first. So later in levels, maybe. Gunslingers are either going to be too far away to help their teammates with their reactive abilities, or they don't have a hand free. Or I guess they could play field medic with amulet or chalice, or stay close enough to bad guys to use a bell on them. At least they add 2 damage to each shot. Glimpse vulnerability, it has a little damage. The gunslinger could be a little tricky, but there are benefits there. Just not a wide variety of them. Inventor. Overdrive stacks with the flat 2 damage from Thaum's Glimpse vulnerability. Okay, there's just a huge amount of options with an Inventor, because it depends on how they build their innovation and which one they take. The amulet, bell, and weapon are all good reactions, which I already mentioned, which Inventors don't get a lot of. Just remember that any of the Thaumaturge abilities can just be flavored as tech instead. Okay, I give him a stim pack. Chalice. I'm holding a pheromone activator. Regalia. Whatever you like. It's fun. Investigate. I'm building I'm making a build off of that idea. Thaum, Inventor. Investigator. Devise a stratagem. This is just a great ability. If you use the ability with an agile or finesse weapon, you can use your intelligence to hit, which means you will likely have a hand free, which you can use to hold a Regalia or Tome. Regalia gives you bonuses on social checks. Tome gives you skills. Both of these fit pretty much any investigator, especially empiricism. It just fits thematically. You know more stuff. You can also take the Thaum feat Haunt Ingenuity. Maybe you're a paranormal investigator. We have to make a team of Ghostbusters. I love this idea. Maybe I could get set up with other YouTubers who want to make this. We should try it. The lantern also gives you sort of investigative abilities. It lets you perceive things better. Yeah, it's investigating stuff. Okay. Investigators don't have anything like the bell or weapon implements interruptions, so those would definitely be useful. I see a jack of all trades who takes Investigator and chooses the alchemical sciences methodology, then takes Thaumaturge for the tome implement to gain whatever the hell extra skills they want every day, and they gain a bonus to recall knowledge. Then taking the Thaum feats for scroll thaumaturgy, talisman esoterica, and eventually thaumaturgic ritualist. So you can have alchemy, spells from scrolls, talismans, rituals, any skill you want, and you haven't even used your skill feats yet. Talk about flexible. And just cool. Like in any situation, you can be like, yeah, I have that. Yeah, I'm ready for that. Yeah, good. Kineticist. Kineticists are flexible in creation, and you can decide whether you have an extra action to take on your turn or a reaction ability. But no matter what, you will always have an extra hand. So you can always choose a passive implement like the Lantern or Regalia or Tome. Really, Kineticists are strong. They have defensive AoE control and healing abilities, but not a lot of utility. So I would probably choose Lantern because it provides an ability that is hard to get with a Kineticist. Or the Bell, because the Bell is great. Magus. You can combine almost any implement with Magus if you choose Sparkling Targe. You need both hands for any other Magus. So you can choose any implement along with your magic shield. Just whichever one is going to fill a need that isn't filled by your spells. Monk. 2 extra damage on every hit because of Glimpse Vulnerability with the Thaumaturge archetype is still extra damage on every hit. And monks always have a hand free if you're doing unarmed attacks, which most monks do. So any implement could be wielded by them. I'd say that the bell could almost always be useful because monks are usually in melee, so they'll be close enough to use it. Amulet is useful also for better longevity in combat, protecting yourself, and you could protect allies too. And eventually, like, the whole group. No, actually, you can't get to that point with a multiclass archetype mixed in because you just can't get feats that are that high. You can get it, it doesn't matter, you can't. And weirdly, the wand could actually be useful for a monk. I'm gonna diss the wand a lot during this video. It's not useless. It's just not. However, if you want to have a wand-like ability, it's essentially a cantrip that is based on your charisma modifier, which any charisma-based caster can do. And the wand does not synergize well with the Thaumaturge's own abilities. For example, it's not an attack. It's not a weapon, a strike, I should say, and it's not an unarmed strike. So you never get to trigger weaknesses with it. I don't even know why it's in this class. Or in this case, archetype. Oracle. Haunt Ingenuity for theme, because it's cool. You just, like, sense spirits in the area because I'm an oracle. Oracles get divine spells, which are good at buffing someone in melee combat. They also don't get a shield, so if I wanted to be able to be in melee range, I would probably choose the weapon or bell to get a reactive interrupting ability. But it also depends on which mystery you get. Battle mystery, you would probably choose weapon implement or amulet implement, because you're right there taking damage to the face. For psychic, I keep mentioning it, but it fits so many different themes. Haunt Ingenuity, I just sense psychic impressions. And also for the psychic, I would choose any reactive implement. Bell is my favorite, of course, because it interrupts anything. It gives people penalties, and negative conditions are good. But Amulet can reduce the damage you take regularly, and like with the Kineticist, you will always have a spare hand. So you are free to choose the Regalia, Lantern, or Tome. You probably don't want to choose any of the implements that use any action because psychics tend to use their actions every turn to great devastating effect. So I would go with passive or reactive. Ranger with the Thaumaturge archetype. Thaumaturge archetype gives you an extra 2 damage on every hit. It's great for rangers because they hit things a lot. That's what they do. I like the mirror for the ranger because it can give flanking, but also it's just a really unique ability for a ranger to have. There's nothing like this that a ranger can do. For rogue, Mastermind works very well with the Thaumaturge archetype because both use a recall knowledge check at the outset of combat. And like usual, adding 2 damage to each attack is good. Thief with the mirror. I mean, I don't know, enough said. Flanking, Thief is great. It's and you can like even more easily bounce onto rooftops or into alleyways or from doorway to doorway. It's like, instead of stealthing the distance, you just teleport the distance. I know, it's not exactly a teleport, but it's a teleport. It just takes extra actions. Which, if you're a thief, you're stalking people, you don't really care about using extra actions. For the thief, though, also, bell, the weapon, the regalia, weirdly, the lantern works. Yeah, it's a bright light, so it's kind of weird, but it actually helps them thieve better. Because they can spot things better. Tome is completely unnecessary for rogues. Because it's just skills, and rogues are all about skills. Although I suppose, if you really just want to be obnoxious and have every skill possible, then take the tome. And you just have every skill. Plus lores. So more than every skill. The wand could actually be handy sometimes with the rogue. Just because it's ranged magic. And straight rogues, okay. Rogues don't get that unless you're the trickster. Or you multiclass into another spellcasting class. With the Sorcerer, the amulet for protecting yourself, the bell for stopping enemies from hurting you or your allies, the chalice for healing allies in an emergency or giving someone else temporary hit points are probably the most useful because they provide abilities that the Sorcerer doesn't inherently have. And two of those are reactions, which Sorcerers don't usually get. So most of the Thaum implements and abilities are just diversifying a Sorcerer's actions in combat. They don't really add any direct power to a Sorcerer. They just allow you to fill different roles or assist in areas that occasionally your group needs in a combat. Even if it's just to drain the chalice to heal someone once during a combat, that can help your group survive and therefore win. Summoner, who takes the Thaum archetype. The amulet is a reaction that helps prevent damage. The chalice also helps prevent damage. The bell also, obviously, for everyone. The lantern is an ability that the summoners don't usually have that kind of thing for. So the chalice is fun because your pet can be fighting in melee and you can give yourself temporary hit points to protect them because you share your hit point total. It's really cool. Amulet and bell are also useful, of course, because they're reactions and the summoner doesn't have a lot of options for reactions. And again, summoners have a free hand. So you can hold a lantern, which gives you the ability to find traps more easily, and really you could just choose whatever's going to give you the flavor you're looking for. Mirror isn't that great because you're already trying to balance actions and it takes one. I mean, I guess it could be used to fill even more squares on the battlefield. For the Swashbuckler, Thaum is an odd choice. But only because the Swashbuckler has Swashbuckler. Bell because it's just useful. Regalia, if you want to have an implement, it's probably the most solid choice for most Swashbucklers because it assists Bon mot, Faint, Demoralize. They can all be helped by Regalia. Esoteric Lore adds 2 extra damage to each hit, which is nice because you're buckling swashes. The Swashbuckler feats Nibble Dodge, Charmed Life, and Dueling Parry interfere with implements, either reactive or any, depending on what that specific feat is. So the implements, and therefore Thaumaturge, just won't work for every Swashbuckler. But they can. It can if you choose your Swashbuckler subclass and feats well. My favorite, Witch. I'm sure everything works for Witch, right? Maybe not. So for the Witch, I would personally choose the feat Talisman Esoterica for theme. Just have little things that you have accumulated that are made of like rabbit bones and squirrel teeth, and they do weird things like let you run on water. It's mostly just for theme, but it is also extra flexibility, which witches don't really have tons of. I mean, I suppose witches do at the outset because you can choose which tradition of spells you have, but after that they don't have a lot of mystical flexibility. Except their hair is flexible. I'm babbling. Amulet. It's a reactive protect yourself, or friends. Bell, of course, because the bell is just always useful as a reaction. It's the most useful implement for a Thaumaturge multiclass archetype choice. I've noticed that witches tend to want more skills, so I'd say tome. And they don't tend to have actions to spare on their turn. So, passive, go tome. Reactive, amulet, and bell. Those are probably the best choices for implements for the witch. For the wizard, really varies. Wizards' customization is really their spell selection. So your implements are just going to fill in spaces left by what you actually have in your spellbook. Or by what you're missing in your spellbook. The amulet, protect yourself or an ally, because wizards don't do a lot of that. Okay, they can. The typical blaster mage doesn't. Bell, because it's a reaction that interrupts people, and that's actually really funny, especially if it's like a caster battle. You can get your spells off, but your enemy can't, because you just keep ringing a bell in their face. Quite distracting for a caster. The chalice is useful because wizards don't have a lot of ways to heal people or give temporary hit points. Lantern, I suppose, depending on your purpose. You can protect your allies, counter spells or strikes, heal your allies, pierce illusions. All of those implements are very helpful. Now on to the next phase, multiclass archetypes for the Thaumaturge to take. Obviously, this video is not including any of the non-multiclass archetypes for Thaumaturge. There's a shit ton of archetypes out there. But if you listen to this and follow the general themes of the things that would benefit a Thaumaturge, then you will have an idea of what kinds of archetypes would work well. And if you have questions, come see me on the Discord. There will be a link below in the description. Just come talk to me or talk to a room full of people that know Pfftoo, because they're there. And they're pretty cool. Alchemist gives mutagens to make you better in combat, poison for weapons, or bombs for ranged. And remember that if you succeed at your Esoterica roll, you trigger weaknesses with every weapon strike. And bombs are weapons. And the persistent damage counts. So Alchemist Fire also triggers that holy weakness, and the monster takes the Alchemist Fire damage plus their weakness amount every round they're burning. This is a great choice for a Thaumaturge. Apparently I'm growling at them. Barbarian Thaumaturges gives more flat damage. Yeah, that's it, done. Champion. Okay, no. There's also, like, it could save you some actions in combat by charging in. There's the Barbarian feat that'll help. There might be others depending on your purpose. But mostly it's just for the flat damage. Champion allows for more melee options and defensive options and healing. Champion is a great choice for Thaumaturge. Just be careful choosing your champion feats as the Thaumaturge, because, well, champions get a reaction, and 3 implements have reactions. So just be aware of what you're doing. See how it's all going to contrast. Investigator helps with devise a stratagem, allowing the Thaumaturge to better apply their extra damage. It's just, devise a stratagem's amazing. Kineticist can provide healing or armor or AoE damage or control. It's a kineticist. Like, sure, there might not be a lot of like direct synergization because kineticists don't make attacks usually. But it does give a lot of variance. You could use earth armor or wood or metal armor. There's some cool stuff that you could use if you're in melee combat. And like I said, just the cool stuff a kineticist gets. Adding a kineticist onto anything is just going to give you more options, including healing yourself in combat, which is always nice. A monk could make a fun kind of Thaum. Key Rush is nice for movement and a little defense. Stoked Flame Stance is nice for persistent damage as well, which triggers weaknesses, which is BS with a Thaumaturge. Psychic, the Silent Whisper. Adds some interesting options for a Thaum, like Daze, which is it. Thaumaturges don't have cantrips, so that's a good one. Message and Mental Link. The first, Daze, is just nice to have an option for offensive spell that has a good critical effect, and the other two help you transmit the knowledge you have gained with your esoteric lore. Depending on the GM you have, though, you might just be able to say, hey guys, use silver. Tangible Dream Psychics have a great defensive option, which Thaums are pretty lacking. Yes, I know, they have the interrupt actions, but direct defense, they don't really have a lot. Like, you can't put up a shield, you don't have the shield spell. Yes, temporary hit points if you plan for it. If nothing else, taking Tangible Dream Psychic as a Thaumaturge frees you up to choose other implements that aren't based on protecting you. Rogue gives sneak attackers 1d4 damage on a strike, so that helps the Thaum a little bit, I guess. Like, the Thaumaturge already gets so much flat damage bonus that 1d4 damage isn't going to do a lot, but technically it's more damage. At low levels, yes, it's noticeable. Nimble Dodge is nice from a rogue. Instead of using weapon implement, if you don't have a weapon implement, you can just increase your AC. Cool. Sorcerer. I am surprised how well a Sorcerer multiclass archetype helps a Thaumaturge. Okay, so Aberrant Bloodline gives one of the few ways a Thaumaturge can get reach, but only for unarmed attacks. But it still works. I mean, for delivering spells too, but you're not going to have a lot of spells to deliver as a Thaumaturge. It's 10 feet of reach. You can't really get many ways. The Demonic Bloodline offers Gluttonous Jaw, which gives you an okay damage unarmed attack for the next minute, and it gives you temporary hit points when you deal damage with it. That's awesome. If you're going to be in melee anyway, it keeps your hands free, so you can have a shield if you want as a Thaum. Similarly, Dragon Bloodline is nice for Dragon Claws. Does extra damage, but it's not protective like Gluttony is. The Hag Bloodline is good for Jealous Hex, which is like the reason anybody takes the Hag Bloodline. It gives a negative condition based on your enemy's highest attribute, which is extremely useful. And I guess it could synergize well theoretically with the Bell because it also gives negative conditions. But I would probably just skip the Bell if I can take this. Yeah, because the Bell doesn't necessarily last for very long. Not until you get higher in levels. Yeah. Wow, I found something better than Bell. Cool. Swashbuckler. Similar to Rogue, it has some defensive options you could choose. The whole hand thing isn't great for a Thaumaturge, so it's not an amazing option. But like if you have the Regalia and you choose a swashbuckleriness that uses skills in combat that are boosted by the Regalia, it's a minor benefit. Really, it's just if you want the flavor of the Swashbuckler, it will work with the Thaumaturge. The Witch multiclass archetype. Cauldron is nice for early level potions and oils, but I just like the feel of a Thaumaturge Witch. Like, I know they're not technically meshing well, but they're both seekers of the unseen, dabblers in mysteries. They seek occult knowledge. It's cool. It's fun to roleplay. Wizard multiclass archetype. The Necromancy School's spell Call of the Grave gives sickened and slowed with a spell attack roll. Both are good conditions to give. And also it's just kind of amazing that you're just like some dude with like a book that you're reading and then you shoot a gray ray of sickening out of your hand. It surprises people and they're good conditions to give. Now a couple of mentions. First, honorable mention, and then the dishonorable mention. Honorable mention, Fighter. Fighter archetype works great with a Thaumaturge. I'd never choose it, but that's because I like weird magic-y shit and occult research. but it works well with how the Thaumaturge functions in combat. Aside from the fighter's like weapon proficiencies, the feats are what you're really looking for. So getting things like Intimidating Strike, Lunge, and Rebounding Toss, all of those just help capitalize on what the Thaumaturge does anyway, hitting people and doing extra damage. Cool. Okay, now the dishonorable mention. It's gonna take a couple minutes, bear with me here. Sparkling Targe Magus. Okay, so if you choose a Thaumaturge and you want to multiclass archetype into Magus, or if you are Magus and you want to multiclass archetype into Thaum, both of those will be informed by what I'm about to say. And I heard it brought up a couple of times, so I decided to talk about it. The Tome Implement. Sparkling Targe with Raise a Tome can essentially make a book shield. The feat is called Shielded Tome. In order to take this, you also have to have the Raise a Tome feat that Magi have, which says you raise up the book you're holding and flip it open to defend yourself and expedite your studies. The book remains raised until the start of your next turn. While you have a book raised, you gain a +2 circumstance bonus to AC and a +1 circumstance bonus to recall knowledge to identify creatures using a skill related to the subject of the book. Arcana if you're using your spellbook kind of thing. This bonus is in addition to any item bonus the book normally gives to the check. If you have shield block, you can use the tome for that feat. Hardness 3, hit points 12, broken threshold 6. As though it were a shield. Sounds cool! Whenever you use an ability that allows you to raise a shield, such as Emergency Targe, you can raise a tome instead, changing any requirements that normally require a shield to apply to your book. And this all combines with Sparkling Targe Hybrid Study. Quite well. So we can make any shield, even a magical one with runes on it, into our Raise a Book shield, and make the book our Tome Implement, or make the Tome Implement our Raised Book shield. But the only reason we ever hold our tome for the Thaumaturge abilities is for a +1 circumstance bonus to recall knowledge checks, which is the same kind of bonus and the amount of bonus that Raise a Tome, the Magus feat, gives. So where's the benefit? You're putting your implement in the way of danger to be destroyed, and if it is, then you can't use that implement anymore for a day, because you have to rededicate a new tome. It is true that the Sparkling Targe Hybrid Study, if you're an actual full Magus and you're just taking the Thaumaturge Archetype, adds additional hardness to the tome, usually 1 or 2. This just doesn't give enough synergy to be helpful. Okay, it gives AC if you have a bunch of feats to start with. Sorry, not a bunch of feats. A couple feats to start with. Is that really worth taking the archetype to do this combo? It's just not great. Yeah, it works, but why? So that's why I mention it. It's deceptive. I thought it was really interesting. In fact, I watched a NoNap video where he's like, you can do this and it's cool. And I'm like, yeah. And then somebody made a comment. A couple of somebody's made comments on videos about doing this, and it seemed cool, but no, it just doesn't help. It's not great. Tell me in the comments if you disagree. Feel free to bitch at me. I'm okay with that. I can take it. I'll probably argue back, though. No, I take into consideration whatever anybody tells me. So yeah, that's my opinion. I don't think it's good. Thank you for joining me today. I'm grateful for your help and kind words in the comments. And thank you to my lovely patron peoples. I release unique videos on Patreon, do giveaways with patrons, and the highest level patrons get one-on-one time with me every month, and something made for them once a month as well. If you'd like to help me and this channel, you can click on the link in the description for Patreon. Check it out. If you want to make sure to catch the next video I make, hitting the subscribe button is a good way to remember to check back and see what I've done. If you like the video and think I've earned it, give it a thumbs up or share to tell the algorithm gods that there's something here worth your time. I feel so blessed. My God has bestowed his blessing of num-nums. And you can see the Thaumaturge build that should be out in a few days after this video. That'd be there. Or if you want to see the archetype videos, they're cool, especially for the Thaumaturge. The Ritualist is a good one to check out. And remember, only 4 words in the English language end in dus. Horrendous, tremendous, hazardous, and stupendous. I don't know, that just sounds dubitous to me. Or even stupidous.